Hi everyone, welcome to Romance Stories. Before watching the video, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you very much. The date that Serafina, the heiress to the Liu fortune, had spent months pleading for was snatched away by the tasker sent to redeem her. Using his system, he locked me in the equipment room where I was staying. With a smug grin, he sneered through the door. Watch closely. Everything that belongs to you, I'm going to take one by one. I didn't panic. I watched him hum a tune as he prepped for the date with a sense of triumph. I forgot to tell him one thing. Serafina is a pure, obsessive lunatic. No one but me can soothe her extreme, violent outbursts. And this date? This was an opportunity she had begged for more times than I could count. The first time Julian saw Serafina, his eyes lit up with greed. He had tugged on my sleeve and said, "I like her. You're my cousin. You'll definitely help me out, right?" At that moment, Serafina was pinning a girl to the ground, beating her until she was unrecognizable. Her eyes didn't even blink, arrogant, aggressive, and utterly wild. I frowned slightly, not missing the guaranteed win look in Julian's eyes. This wasn't a request. It was a declaration of war. He knew Serafina and I were childhood friends, so his words were a direct warning to back off. Of course, I knew why he was so confident. He wasn't ordinary. He was a tasker, born to save Serafina from her own darkness. Julian licked his lips, looking at her with predatory hunger. I really love this kind of obsessive, crazy girl. It's a thrill. I ignored his arrogance. If I didn't step in, Serafina was going to kill someone. The girl pinned under her was Chloe, our class representative. Usually gentle and well-behaved, I had no idea how she had provoked Serafina. Now, she was held fast to the pavement, blood streaming from her nose. Serafina had always been temperamental, often fighting without reason. But I had rarely seen her lose control to this extent. People around us started shouting for me. "Ethan, quickly, pull her off. Something terrible is going to happen." They all knew. I was the only one who could calm Serafina in this state. I placed my hand gently on her back, but my voice carried a cold authority that brooked no refusal. "Serafina, stop it. Now." This wasn't the first time I had to soothe her this way. Serafina was extreme and warped, growing into the exact kind of nightmare that kept her parents up at night. When it came to violence, she was a natural-born prodigy. No one could control her. Only me. When Serafina's parents realized she actually listened to me, they treated me like a lifesaver, personally visiting my father multiple times to plead for my help. Eventually, after I agreed, they went to great lengths to arrange for us to be in the same class. Because of this, Serafina even had to repeat a grade just to stay with me. Under my steadying presence, she finally stopped. Chloe, still on the ground, gasped for air. She scrambled up, wiping the blood from her lip with a sneer. "I told you, Serafina, either you kill me, or I'm not letting you off." Her not letting off meant reporting the assault to the teachers. The faculty already disliked Serafina. With an incident like this, she would face disciplinary action at the very least. We were in our senior year. A black mark on her permanent record now would follow her for life. Beating someone was indeed Serafina's fault. I looked at her, a hint of concern in my voice. "Why did you hit her?" Serafina didn't answer. She just leaned silently against me, her aggression replaced by a quiet intensity. She reached out and gripped my hand tightly, dusting off the specks of dirt that had gotten on me when I rushed over. That's when Julian decided to make his move. He smiled at Serafina, his voice dripping with forced charm. "I believe in you, Serafina. I'm sure you had your reasons for hitting her. Ethan, surely you don't doubt her, do you?" As he spoke, he reached out, attempting to take her hand. "Besides, you look so cool when you fight. I really like girls with that kind of fire." Serafina sidestepped him instantly, her expression one of pure disgust. Chloe, hearing this, was livid. "Are you saying I deserve to be beaten?" Her face was visibly bruised, blood still staining the corner of her mouth. Julian ignored her, his eyes fixed greedily on Serafina's beautiful face. He reached out to support her. "Serafina, let me take you to the infirmary." There wasn't a single scratch on Serafina's perfect face. Without warning, in broad daylight, I delivered a sharp, stinging slap to Julian's face. Julian was suddenly brought home from the countryside by my father. In my 17 years, I had never heard of such a cousin. My father told me his life had been tragic, that his parents died early in an accident, and he would have to live with us from now on. He'll be going to school with you. You need to look after him, my father had instructed. Despite the supposed tragedy, Julian didn't act like someone who had just lost his parents. For instance, the moment he moved in, he used our family's money to buy a mountain of clothes. In just one day, his room was overflowing with designer shoes and luxury apparel. Yet, he clearly wasn't satisfied. While shopping, he grumbled under his breath, "This family is so stingy. A corporation with a daily revenue in the tens of millions, and they only give me $1 million for daily shopping? It's like throwing scraps to a beggar." Even as a distant cousin, he shouldn't have been raised with such an attitude. On his first day of school, Julian chose a pristine white hoodie. If I wasn't mistaken, it was the most expensive item he bought, worth $20,000. He drenched himself in cologne, narcissistically admiring his sharp jawline in the mirror. You'd think he was heading to a blind date rather than a classroom. I understood. Everything Julian did was to impress Serafina. To be honest, if someone truly could redeem Serafina, I would be happy. Julian could have used love to change her or gentleness to stay by her side. But Julian chose a path I cannot accept. He praised her for being cool while hurting someone. If Serafina took that to heart, all the effort I had put into stabilizing her over the years would go down the drain. I looked at Julian, whose face was still tilted from the force of my slap, and smiled. If there's a next time, it won't be just a simple slap. Julian looked at me with pure disbelief, clearly indignant but not daring to provoke me further. I took Serafina's hand and asked her directly, "Give me a reason. Why did you hit her?" Chloe interjected mockingly. "What other reason? Serafina doesn't need a reason to hit people. Isn't she just a psycho?" "I wasn't asking you," I snapped, glancing at her coldly before turning my eyes back to Serafina. At that moment, Serafina looked exactly like a puppy that had done something wrong, her head hanging low. She radiated a listless, indifferent aura, yet she stubbornly gripped my hand, refusing to let go. After a long silence, she finally spoke up, sounding genuinely aggrieved. "Does the promise to take me to the amusement park still stand?" Previously, she had guaranteed me multiple times that she would be good and wouldn't have another outburst, all just to beg me to take her to the park in a few days. But now, she had beaten someone right in front of me. I didn't expect that in this situation, her only concern was whether I would cancel our date. I laughed out of sheer frustration. Serafina is a deeply troubled individual. I've known this for a long time. The things she has done, things that others find incomprehensible, aren't just isolated incidents. For example, on the first day of high school, simply because a girl in our class looked at me with an unpleasant expression, that girl almost had her leg broken in an alleyway that afternoon. When I found Serafina then, she was like a bristling fox, refusing to be pulled away. The truth was, that girl was my cousin. She was just surprised to see me in the same class. I found Serafina's behavior utterly bizarre, yet she showed no remorse. Looking at the scratches on her own body, she felt they were badges of her love for me. Anyone who looks at you like that, I won't let any of them off. Back then, I had simply tapped her on the head in anger. "She's just my cousin, you idiot." She didn't mean anything by it. Once she realized I was truly furious, her arrogance vanished, replaced by a sullen gloom. It took a long time before she finally stammered out a sentence. "Don't be mad. I was wrong." She apologizes faster than anyone I know, but she never actually changes. I didn't want to deal with her anymore. That night, I told Serafina's parents, "I can't manage your daughter at all. She doesn't listen to a word I say. From now on, let her do whatever she wants. Stop trying to pair us together." At that moment, I realized Serafina was like an atomic bomb, ready to detonate at any second. I never knew when she'd snap or what trouble she'd drag me into. Today, she hurts others. Tomorrow, she might hurt me. I'm a law-abiding citizen who upholds core social values, but she is clearly a sociopath with a fractured personality. Yet, escaping her proved impossible. After learning I wanted nothing more to do with her, Serafina stood outside my front gate that very night. Despite the torrential rain, she insisted on seeing me, looking like a drenched, pathetic stray. I told her to get lost, but she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Ethan, don't leave me. Tell me what I did wrong, and I'll fix it. I swear I'll change." You have to understand, Our villa district is home to the most prominent families in high society. Her screaming was a direct blow to the reputation the Liu family had spent years maintaining. Since that night, everyone in our circle knew. The obsessive daughter of the Lius was clinging desperately to the young heir of the Ethelgard family. I looked into Seraphina's beautiful, clouded eyes. I don't think she's love-struck in the traditional sense. On the contrary, I've always felt she's a heavy burden. While other guys were out exercising or playing basketball with friends, I had almost no friends because of her. No one dared to play with me. The few people who did approach me either did so because Seraphina was beautiful and they wanted a way in, or because they wanted to use my status to climb the social ladder. But after witnessing Seraphina's feral side, they all stayed far away. Every day, I had to balance my studies with being Seraphina's full-time handler. She was a constant source of trouble, and it was becoming unbearable. Given the choice, I would walk away from her without a single moment of hesitation. So, whenever Julian crossed my mind, I felt an intense urge to discard Seraphina without a second thought. If you want her that badly, she's all yours. I don't want her anyway. However, Julian also gave me an overwhelming sense of spite. I absolutely did not want him to get his way. For example, on his first day at the Ethelgard estate, I was busy arranging flowers to add some beauty to the world. He had the audacity to snatch a bloom right out of my hand and said softly, "Cousin, I feel like your color palette is all wrong. Red and green look so tacky together." It's true. Everyone in our circle knows my aesthetic is vivid. I love bold crimsons and deep purples, emerald greens paired with rubies. Marrying blue roses with red petals is my favorite thing to do. I smirked then, responding in a lazy, drawling tone. I have the money. Since I bought the flowers, I can ruin them however I please. I glanced at his pale hand, which was nearly crushing one of my white roses, and added, "Those were air-freighted from a royal garden in France. If you break it, you can't afford the replacement." In the blind spot where my father couldn't see, Julian's expression turned dark and gloomy. But the moment he turned to my father, he put on a face of extreme grievance. "Uncle, does Ethan not like me? I really didn't mean to mock his taste. It's just his flower arrangements really aren't that pretty." He expected my father to scold me for my arrogance. To his shock, my father simply patted his shoulder and said, "Your cousin is indeed very rich. He can indulge his whims however he likes. Don't go around trying to boss him around." Julian was new. He didn't realize that the Ethelgards reached this peak because of me, a business prodigy. Every flicker of jealousy in his eyes was caught in my sight. At the same time, I was skeptical. Why would a system choose such an insolent brat to redeem Seraphina? My only assessment of Julian was that he was rude, incredibly rude. When he heard the words amusement park, I clearly felt his surge of excitement. He stepped forward with a fawning smile and grabbed my arm. "How can my cousin's word not count? Don't worry, Seraphina, he'll definitely go." Of course, I knew why he was so happy about the park. The system had told him that the amusement park was the nexus point where Seraphina could truly be saved. Only there could he finally replace me and make her fall for him. Before I could even speak, Julian had accepted the invitation on my behalf. I wanted to refuse, but when my eyes met Seraphina's, which were growing brighter by the second, the words died in my throat. Still, I hadn't forgotten my original question. "So, why did you hit her?" Someone standing nearby seemed unable to take the tension any longer and quietly raised their hand. Because Chloe had said one thing, that I was handsome, Seraphina had completely lost it. Chloe sneered, showing no remorse at all. "That's right, I just complimented him a few times." Next thing I know, Seraphina pins me to the ground and starts swinging. Why wouldn't I report her? Chloe's gaze wasn't hidden. It swept over me with a clear, malicious intent. In that split second, I understood exactly why Seraphina had attacked her. My expression chilled instantly, and Seraphina, sensing the shift in my mood, panicked. Her first reaction was that she had anger me again. I can apologize," she stammered, hitting her own head in frustration, a smudge of dried blood still clinging to the corner of her mouth. She instinctively licked her lips. Seeing Seraphina's spirits drop, Chloe grew emboldened. "Kneel down and apologize to me. Otherwise, I'm telling the teacher and getting you disciplined." Everyone knew I was usually incredibly strict when Serafina caused trouble. Every time I scolded her, she became submissive and deeply saddened. But this time, in front of everyone, I spoke up. Chloe, if you dare go to the teacher, I'll go to your parents today. I'll tell them you've been trying to seduce me and demand justice. At school, Chloe maintained the facade of a well-behaved, sensible girl. Very few knew about the messy, indecent side she hid. She wouldn't dare let her father discover who she truly was behind his back. If he knew, she'd face a severe punishment. Julian chimed in, "Cousin, you're twisting the truth. Covering for evil like this isn't right, even if you want to protect those close to you. There has to be a better way." I turned on him. "A moment ago, you were the one saying Serafina looked cool while fighting. Now you're the one who wants her punished? Make up your mind, Julian." I didn't care what he thought next. I looked back at Chloe. "If you don't want your father to find out, you'd better behave. Besides, you know exactly why you got hit." Serafina was stunned, her body tensing up. You aren't mad at me? Why would I be mad?" I smiled slightly. Chloe wasn't innocent. I could guess the kind of filth she had been spewing about me behind my back. It was definitely more than just calling me handsome. After all, it wasn't the first time I'd overheard her talking trash. The great Ethelgard heir? In the future, he's just another piece of meat to be sold off for a political marriage, she had said. So, not taking my personal revenge until now was already a sign of my high moral character. I took Serafina's hand and led her away. I knew that at this moment, the look Julian was giving my retreating back was as poisonous as a snake. He didn't want me to be good to Serafina. He didn't want her to become even more dependent on my protection. But I didn't care. I wasn't about to suffer in silence, just to suit his plans. Julian was practically seething with rage. I could clearly overhear his conversation with the system. "Can't we just make this Ethan guy drop dead? He's such a massive obstacle. As long as he's around, Serafina won't even give me the time of day. Talking to her is like talking to a brick wall," he complained. The system replied with a mechanical chill. "The host is strictly forbidden from taking any action that causes physical harm to NPCs. Failure to comply will result in punishment, ranging from a level demotion to total erasure." Though Julian muttered a few curses under his breath, he wasn't actually suicidal enough to risk erasure. "I'm just kidding. It's just that Ethan is incredibly annoying. Don't worry, I want to handle this myself. After all, I'm the protagonist." The system's voice remained icy. "What is the host plan then?" Julian let out a cold laugh. "I want Ethan to watch Serafina and me fall in love while he stands by, helpless. I'm going to replace him in the Ethelgard family entirely. Love, academics, family status. I'll take them all one by one." It was true. I could hear every word between Julian and his system. I didn't know why, and Julian certainly didn't know I could hear him. I also didn't quite understand why he harbored such a deep-seated grudge against me. Even as he plotted with the system, he kept a sweet, fake smile on his face for my benefit. "If you don't actually like Serafina, stop stringing her along," he said, winking at me. "I'm sure a refined cousin like you wouldn't stoop so low as to fight his own younger brother for a girl, right?" Simultaneously, I heard him whine to the system. "This is so tedious. Why can't I just win over some innocent girl instead of stealing one from another man? It's beneath my status as a great protagonist. Besides, this Ethan guy is such a green tea manipulator. He acts like he doesn't want her while keeping her on a leash. It's disgusting." Facing Julian's hollow smile, I looked away absent-mindedly. I wasn't angry. I was reflecting on the past. Over the years, even though I had always been the one taking care of Serafina, only I knew the truth. I was just as much of a troublemaker as she was in the beginning. Though I looked like a straight-A student back then, and Serafina was the problem child, I had started smoking in middle school. I did everything a middle schooler shouldn't do. But whenever my father was about to catch me, I'd shove the cigarette into Serafina's hand. She took every beating meant for me without a single complaint. From that moment on, the inseparable bond between Serafina and me was forged. In the years that followed, whenever I tried to wash my hands of her, she would drop her gaze and whisper, "Who was the one who knelt for 3 days in the ancestral hall for you? Who was the one who took the fall for being a delinquent instead of studying?" And just like that, I'd find myself obediently going back to being her handler. In my eyes, Serafina is a villain. She is clearly capable of self-control, She isn't nearly as much of a lost cause as outsiders think. But she intentionally loses control just to cause trouble for me, just to cling to me. What leaves me even more speechless is that someone like her actually attracts taskers trying to conquer her. Truth be told, the number of suitors Serafina has had since childhood is staggering. As far back as my memory goes, there has always been a swarm of boys around her. In kindergarten, a boy gave her a lollipop and promised, "From now on, I'll make sure your whole life is sweet, never bitter." In middle school, the bad boys protected her, declaring, "As long as I'm here, no one touches her." In high school, even the top-tier scholars pursued her. But strangely, after failing to win her heart, these people would give up one by one and vanish from her life. Sometimes I wondered if Serafina was so difficult to deal with that the universe had to spawn a tasker like Julian. But on second thought, that seemed impossible. The quality of the guys who pursued her before was far superior to Julian. The boy from kindergarten came from 3 generations of powerful politicians, clean, honest, and kind-hearted. At least his intentions were pure. The bad boy from middle school? He was the son of the world's richest man, a billionaire's heir. Though he was arrogant and a bit wild, he later became a titan in the business world and even helped me out. He was a true prodigy outside of school. The scholar in high school, though from a poor background, had an indomitable will. Standing at the top of the grade through sheer hard work earned him everyone's respect. Then there's Julian. What exactly is he? If Serafina were to be conquered by someone like him in our final year, I'd have nothing left to say. I overheard Julian asking the system with a hint of dissatisfaction, "Why didn't you let me appear before she met Ethan?" The system replied coldly, "It's not that we didn't think of it, but from the moment Serafina gained consciousness, her world has consisted only of Ethan. This system cannot interfere with the self-operating trajectory of a high-level NPC." My footsteps faltered for a fraction of a second, but I didn't stop. I knew Julian's system had its tricks. I also knew he wouldn't sit idly by while Serafina and I went to the amusement park. However, I didn't expect him to choose such a moronic method. He used his system to lock me in the equipment room, preventing me from leaving. I frowned and asked him what he thought he was doing. Julian gave me a smug, triumphant look. "Just stay put. Don't worry about a thing. I told Serafina that you already headed to the amusement park. She's probably there by herself now. After all, it doesn't really matter who the date is with, does it?" I let out a sigh. Julian expected me to blow a fuse, but seeing how calm I was, he was the one who ended up annoyed. "What kind of reaction is that?" he snapped. I smiled. "Good luck to you. Not every man feels the need to scrap over a girl." With that, I casually sat down on a chair in the equipment room and pulled out the vocabulary book I had with me. "I'll be waiting for your return." I even gave him a little wave. "Bye, Julian." He let out a cold huff. Acting like a scholar? Everyone knows how rich the Ethelgards are. How can you actually sit there and study vocabulary? Stop faking it. He turned on his heel and left. I shook my head and got back to my studies. This tasker, Julian, was being handled with zero finesse. I'm not like those rich heirs in novels who only know how to lean on their family background. The Ethelgard Empire reached its current heights because of my efforts. Furthermore, if Julian had looked just a little closer, he would have realized that the book I was studying wasn't just any vocabulary list. It was IELTS prep. The future I'm aiming for isn't just a simple school. It's the international stage. To integrate into the global elite, whether at home or abroad, the Ethelgards must be seen as true nobility, and a nobleman shouldn't have a degenerate son. It's not just about a glorious future for the family. I simply refuse to let myself fall into decay. Julian will never understand that principle. By the time Chloe called, I had just finished 2 pages. But this time, she wasn't looking for trouble. She was reluctantly calling for backup. "Serafina, something happened." She paused, then corrected herself. "No, wait. Something happened to Julian." Basically, regardless of who it wasn't good news. When I arrived at the amusement park, I saw Serafina aggressively shoving an ice cream cone into Julian's face. Julian was surrounded by over a dozen delinquent girls with dyed blonde hair. Chloe explained that she had originally intended to secretly snap photos of Serafina and me as evidence of early romance, so she had followed Serafina to the park. Instead, she discovered Julian had secretly hired these girls to put on a show. How did she know? because a few minutes earlier, she saw Julian with his arms around them in an alley, pulling out a stack of cash to divvy up. Then, when they saw Serafina passing by, they transformed into a gang with bad intentions and surrounded Julian to beat him up. However, Serafina showed absolutely no desire to help him. Seeing this, Julian desperately pointed at Serafina and claimed she was his girlfriend. The dozen girls seized the opportunity to surround Serafina. Everything seemed to be following a typical incident script until Serafina spoke, her voice eerily calm. "I'm in a good mood today. Don't make me angry." The girls, having been paid, naturally didn't listen. They began pushing and shoving, causing her ice cream to spill. Chloe said that at that exact moment, Serafina's face went pitch black. Everyone heard her utter a single sentence. "Do you have any idea how long it took me to choose this dress?" After that, it wasn't a matter of the gang not letting her leave. It was Serafina refusing to let any of them go. This was the first time Julian truly witnessed Serafina's unhinged side. His face, hair, and eyes were all forcibly shoved into the ice cream. The sticky, melting mess was smeared all over him. The shirt he had meticulously picked out was ruined beyond recognition. No one in the surrounding group dared to step in because everyone realized exactly who Serafina was in that moment. Even as she did all this, she wore a faint, haunting smile, but the veins on her forehead were bulging. She was looking at him like a dog that had no power to resist. She has a black belt in Taekwondo. Her physical strength surpasses most men. Seeing me arrive, Julian looked like he'd been granted a second life. He waved frantically for help. "Cousin, save me. Serafina is a complete psycho. She not only stood by while those thugs blocked my path, but she also beat me like this." Serafina slowly pressed his head into the ice cream one last time before letting go. She pulled out a handkerchief and began obsessively wiping her hands. Looking into my eyes, she appeared both earnest and pitiful. "He ruined the dress I spent so much time choosing, and the date I prepared for so long." She let her hair fall forward, her entire being seemingly radiating grievance. "I don't like him," she whispered, but her hands were trembling with panic. "Please don't be mad." Julian scrambled over to me. "Cousin, maybe I'm at fault, but Serafina isn't innocent either. Who in their right mind tries to kill someone over a bit of ice cream? It's just ice cream. If she had a knife today, would she have committed murder?" I let out a cold laugh, completely disregarding how filthy Julian's face was. When my palm met his cheek in a clean, decisive slap, he froze in shock. I was smiling, but my eyes were dead. "Julian, get out of my sight. Now." Serafina hadn't had an episode in a very long time. That was the only reason I agreed to bring her here. Yet Julian had only been here for a few days, and Serafina had already snapped twice. I'm no fool. Chloe might not be a good person behind the scenes, but she isn't stupid enough to provoke Serafina so blatantly without cause. For instance, this time, she could have stayed silent, but she chose to call and tell me the truth. The families of Chloe and the Ethelgards have been associates for generations. From the fact that Julian could lock me in the equipment room, it's clear that while he can't erase NPCs, he can limit or control the actions of certain ones. His original intention that day was to make me misunderstand Serafina, hoping I'd get angry so he could swoop in. After all, everyone knows I detest her violent outbursts. This whole incident was another of his calculations. On the surface, these were just trivial, petty tricks. However, I noticed that the dozen blonde girls he'd recruited were mostly delinquents from reform centers. I had even met two of them before. The nameless back alleys near our old middle school were high-crime areas, hubs for drug use and school violence. When the police showed up, they'd scatter like birds. When the coast was clear, they'd be back to their chaotic ways. During my smoking phase in middle school, I had drifted through those circles. Coincidentally, two of those girls were known drug addicts within our high society circle. These weren't people you could just bribe with simple cash. I can accept Julian viewing us as unimportant NPCs, but I will not allow him to preach about redemption while actively causing us harm. Julian gritted his teeth, clutching his bruised face. "Ethan, you're something else. Another slap? I'll remember this." I ignored him and pulled Serafina away. She looked down on our joined hands and let out a happy little giggle. I glanced at her and couldn't help but ask, "Is it really that funny?" Truthfully, Serafina and I rarely had such intimate contact. I had always treated her as a burden. But looking at her now, I realized her eyes were extraordinarily beautiful. When she wasn't causing trouble, her gaze was peaceful. When she looked at me, her eyes shone like brilliant, twinkling stars. Unexpectedly, her joy flickered and faded. But my clothes are dirty, and you finally agreed to come out with me. I cut her off. You like me? I'm not an idiot. I can see what these actions represent. I paused, thinking it through. Serafina, can you love me? As long as she loves me, Julian's conquest will never succeed. Honestly, Julian's antics lately have been quite laughable in my eyes, and they haven't had a major impact on me. But in the end, a nuisance is still a nuisance. I had a simple, blunt path right in front of me. So why wouldn't I take it? I looked Serafina straight in the eye with a gaze that said she was mine and no one else's. She froze in shock. I didn't think she truly understood the difference between liking someone and the kind of love I was talking about. I was about to clarify that it's the kind of love a wife has for her husband. But before I could speak, her voice rang out, soft yet trembling with excitement. I have only ever loved you. Only you. At that exact moment, I felt the very fabric of the world's order collapse. From far away, Julian's piercing, agonized scream echoed. His conquest was officially declared a failure. When I returned home, Julian was a broken shell of a man. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me. How despicable can you be, Ethan? You knew she loved you all along, yet you kept her on a leash. If it weren't for me pushing you, you would have just kept ignoring her love forever, wouldn't you? You wouldn't let it go. Ethan, I'm literally dying here, and you're still acting so noble. It's making me sick. I narrowed my eyes and asked him a single question. Before you came to this world as a tasker, what kind of person were you? Julian's eyes went wide. He fell silent. Ow, how do you know I'm a tasker? I didn't answer. I just repeated the question. What kind of person were you? Julian's lip twitched, and he looked away. Just an ordinary guy. I didn't do well in school. I died in a car accident and ended up here as a tasker. He sounded bewildered. In novels, taskers get to date all kinds of people and earn massive rewards. Why did everything change when it was my turn? I didn't know what these novels were that he kept referencing. I only knew one thing. If you wanted to conquer Serafina, the first thing you should have done was learn what she actually likes. If you had bothered to ask around, you'd know that Serafina has been terrified of the dark since she was a child. Her mother had an affair, and her father has a violent temper. That's why she developed borderline personality disorder, BPD. That is why her emotions are so volatile and aggressive. There were 1,000 ways you could have increased her affection for you. You could have loved her, stood by her. But you should never have chosen to hurt her, or hurt yourself, just to force a connection. I gave him a thin smile, watching his face fill with growing horror. But you did nothing. You spent all your time competing with me over who was right or wrong, who was superior, even though I never wanted to compete with you in the first place. All of this was born from his pathetic male ego. Because he viewed himself as a great protagonist, he couldn't accept someone as uninhibited as me. But from beginning to end, I never wanted to be part of their web of love and hate. In his previous world, Julian was just an ordinary kid clinging to an unrealistic dream of being the main character. This inherently wasn't a crime, but when a person gains power without the maturity to match, jealousy clouds their reason. When one's character doesn't fit their station, disaster is inevitable. The harsh truth remained. At his core, Julian was nothing more than a destitute, bitter boy. After Julian vanished, I turned to Serafina. Actually, what I said earlier, it was just a joke. Don't take it to heart. Serafina stared at me with an unreadable, deep gaze for a long time. Then, she slowly pinched my arm and said crossly, I knew the moment he was gone. You try to take it back. Me? Wait, what do you mean? I blinked, trying to process her tone. Did you know he was a tasker? Serafina let out a cold huff and leaned in to give me a light kiss on the lips. To be precise, I knew about all of them. The guys who pursued me and then disappeared. They were all taskers. Every single one. From Serafina's perspective, the system had dispatched over 10 taskers to redeem her. These taskers arrived with every imaginable male lead archetype. The rebellious hot boy, the cold and arrogant top scholar, the refined heir of a high society dynasty. But they all failed. Serafina saw through them instantly. They all approached me with an agenda, she explained. Every look they gave me was heavy with a hidden purpose. I hated it. But the person I actually like? Most of the time, his only purpose was trying to avoid me because he thought I was a burden. As these taskers came and went, I had repeatedly felt that Serafina was nothing but trouble. She had endured it at first, but the breaking point came during a previous loop. In that version of the story, the tasker's first move was to directly kill me, Ethan. I was furious, she whispered. If Ethan is dead, my life has no meaning. After all, the version of you that scolds me and keeps me in check is the only thing I find precious. Everyone else in the world looks gray and dull to me. Only the place where you stand is bright and vivid. So I committed suicide. I didn't expect that the moment I died, the entire world would begin to collapse. That was when I realized I'm the child of destiny, the core anchor of this entire world's luck. The consequence of her choosing death was that the entire world would be buried with her, and the system itself would face ultimate punishment. Who knew I was that cool, right? She teased. Faced with total annihilation, the system had begged her for mercy. She took the opportunity to strike a deal. My condition was simple. When the next tasker arrives, I want Ethan to be able to hear the conversations between the tasker and the system. After all, for so long, you never seemed to notice anything strange about all those people chasing me. You just thought I was getting crazier, and that those guys were blind for liking me before eventually dumping me. I just wanted to use someone else's voice to let you know how much I love you. Who told you to never believe me when I said it myself? She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. Actually, I asked the system, why do you all keep sending taskers when you know none of them can ever redeem me? I would only ever stop for Ethan. Why didn't you just make him my male lead from the start? Because the system had answered, if he doesn't hold you back, Serafina, you'll end up killing someone. Your Ethan is selfish. It's true. He wouldn't throw away his future just for me. When it became clear I couldn't get into the elite university he was destined for, he never once thought about lowering his standards to stay with me. His attitude was always, if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. Ethan could be a bit irresponsible, too. He clearly promised my father he would look after me, but the moment I stopped listening, he just went and snitched. I can't handle your daughter. Let's just go our separate ways. He isn't even that kind of a person. If someone bullies him, he'll chase them down 3 blocks just to get his revenge. But if someone tries to bully me, he'll protect me with everything he has. He calculates, he hesitates, and he always weighs his own interests, the kind of male lead that readers usually hate. But I love him exactly like that. Ethan, you might be selfish, and you might not even love me the way I love you. But to love others, one must first love oneself. I am head over heels for that shrewd, self-centered streak of yours. Besides, you still feed stray cats. When you lean down to give them food, your profile is incredibly handsome. I am a fool for love. The system once curiously asked me, how did you realize they were all taskers? I told it, because of the way they looked at me. Every time they appeared, it felt premeditated, just like the countless times I've forced myself into Ethan's path. The difference was that their eyes held no love. They only held the calculated triumph of conquest and redemption. It was just a mission to them. But when I look at Ethan, if he would only look straight back at me, he would see the panic I've been hiding all along. We don't need to grow up into the perfect versions of what main characters should be. We just need to be ourselves. There will always be someone who travels 10,000 miles just to love us for who we are. As Serafina finished speaking, I pulled her tightly into my arms. I never realized how much she had suffered before this. Finally, after so many cycles, there's a timeline where she can truly be my wife.